Thank you for joining me for another Quick Hits conversation. I'm Dr. Robyn. With me today, I have Brigitte Skeene, Bill Lindquist, and Janice Dru-Bennett. I want to ask the question, how do you respond professionally when you were right and they were publicly wrong? Bill, can you kick us off?
Carefully, just to make sure that it doesn't take on a further life of its own in that respect. I mean, I think, at least in one manner, very, to the point and factual, to make sure that you kind of state that this is why. I know from a small business standpoint, there's lots of opinions out there, but specific rules or regulations are set up, and if somebody disagrees with that or states, well, that's not right, you really need to stick to, well, these are what the facts are initially, and really try to keep emotion out of it, especially initially, so it just doesn't snowball into something else.
And I could jump in. I think when I heard this topic, the first thing I was asking myself is, I want more information around who was the person who was publicly wrong, who is the audience that they were publicly wrong to, and what is the consequence? What does it even matter that they were wrong? And so that would perhaps color my response. Whether if it did matter, then I generally like to talk to people behind the scenes before anything goes public, and also prefer to give other people the kind of the opening to claim whether or not they were right or wrong, versus me saying you were wrong. And that's kind of how I like to handle things, whether it's publicly or privately, not to shame other people or to kind of call them out when it's not appropriate. So really thinking through what is the context for this, and what is my role in this situation.
I thought similar to what you were saying to Janice and Bill, stick to facts and everything, and what is the greater context. But the one thing that came first was, how do I know if I'm right? And I think sometimes there's so many, and I'm trying to think of the situations where there's really a clear right and wrong. There's not too many of those. There's a lot of gray and different perspectives. So that was my first reaction. How sure am I right if I'm going to go? So maybe it's just, I like your approach to Janice of behind the scenes, kind of having a conversation to further be curious about what was their point and were they really wrong? And to your point, does it really matter in the big scheme of things? What's the impact of whatever they said or decision they made that might be wrong, and go from there?
Echo what Janice has said, because at least I know, especially in the business that I work in, there's a lot of times where something is initially said and you're wondering how to react to that. And oftentimes kind of a quick conversation will take it. But then in the back of your mind, in this day and age of social media, you're always concerned about, well, will it go out there and be a much larger case? So I agree, if you can handle it behind the scenes, if you can handle it privately, to be able to kind of understand what's going on. Because sometimes it is a misunderstanding. They may think one thing, but the reality is this is how it is. As they say, perception is kind of that individual's reality. So you've got to be careful. But I totally agree in terms of it really depends on the situation.
Yeah, and I love the idea of how important is it? That's the first question I think you should ever ask yourself, is how important is this, that it needs to be pointed out that, oh, I was right and that person was wrong. It may not be a thing. You may be able to just let it go. I know I've had situations on social media where I've gotten into discussions with people, and while I was having a very professional and reasonable discussion, when it came out that, okay, I was right and the other person was wrong, other people in the string really jumped on it and it turned to this really ugly thing. And I was like, wait, hold on. That was not my intention of kind of bringing facts to fore.
Yeah, I think people have also this personal emotion around, I need to be right. Personally, for me, I don't care. I don't need people to know I'm right. You know what I mean? The other part too is, if it's someone and you know how they react when they're being sort of put in question, that may too just determine how you approach it. If there's no point in going there with this person, they don't want to hear it, they're not open to it, why will I, compared to another who I personally want the feedback. If I have said something and I was wrong, I hope someone will take me aside and say, hey, Brigitte, I think you didn't have all your facts straight. And I'd be like, oh, tell me more. So there's a lot of that too. How are they going to receive that?
Yeah, I really like what Brigitte said earlier about how the first question is, am I really right? And I think you're absolutely right. Often people like to say that they're right and don't always look at all the facts, like Bill said. So I think that's something where just really understanding what the situation is. And as I said earlier, with the, does it matter? If it's something that's publicly said and lives are at stake, then something may require a quicker response and a public response. And whether or not a person is willing to acknowledge that colors how I would potentially jump in, versus if it's something that is, again, less consequential and a little bit more around work or how we think, then let's have that clarifying conversation around what are the facts, how are we thinking, how are we feeling, what do we want, and what do we do about it? So
mm-hmm. And what if we turn the question around? What if you're publicly wrong?
I hope someone tells me.
Right.
I would like the opportunity to also be able to acknowledge that publicly as appropriate. Some things may not require a public acknowledgement and apologies behind the scenes, and some things may, again, require that public, I was wrong and this is why, and please take this action, or please forgive me if it requires forgiveness.
Yeah.
And I think what you just said, Janice, is really key, because when you admit you were wrong in person, you give a safe place for others to do that in the future. So you're fostering that it's okay to be wrong. And the reality is we're not going to always be right. So I like that. If I was told I was wrong, I would like to see that I had that opportunity to go back and say, hey, I stated this, I was wrong. And, thank you to this person who came to me. So that way it makes it okay.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think it depends upon how you learn or how someone tells you that you're wrong. So again, back to social media, I had a situation, and this is several years ago, where I stated something that was not horribly wrong, but was not completely right either. And so in the grand scheme of things, did it matter? Probably not. But on social media, this person just tore me apart. I posted multiple links, was like, and just this huge thing. And so my response to them was to say, okay, I can see how, based on the information that you provided, this piece of what I said wasn't exactly on point. Thank you for sharing that with me. Can we have a conversation about how that doesn't make me a stupid person? That doesn't make me dumb. That's not really the right way to let someone know that, hey, you're an idiot. No, I just didn't have this little piece of information.
Yeah, I think how they approach that is more a reflection of them than actually what you said and what they disagreed with.
In that case, you have to make a decision. Am I going to acknowledge what they've said? Am I going to delete the whole thing? Am I going to address that they weren't very kind? Like, there's so much in that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like what Janice had said earlier. I mean, it really depends on just how important is this issue, and how far do you have to go. And I think, as the points were made, I mean, is it serious either from a personal standpoint or from a business standpoint, that if you don't address, at least, acknowledge kind of the situation, how much does that affect you? And that and it's a personal decision. I mean, you have to kind of come to some rational decision there, but it's such a critical component, because you sometimes just because of people not appreciating or understanding kind of the two different viewpoints, it just kind of goes down a path that it never needed to go down.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to let people be wrong.
Yeah. And sometimes you got to know when to walk away of the conversation too.
I think it is a difficult, especially in our cancel culture that we have now, where being wrong is so dangerous. And even when you're right, people can tell you you're right in the wrong way. And so there's risk if you're a business owner in the public space of being both right and wrong really aggressively, I think.
I would agree, just because of, for me, we deal with clients all the time, and you just at times have to be very careful. And I think, to Janice's point that she made earlier about, sometimes you just let it go, and you just hope that, it doesn't get bigger than that. It's unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it can be at times.
Other thing I just wanted to jump in with is that often when we're right or wrong, it's not in public, and it's with our family or with a work situation. And that's a whole different dynamic. I think at home, I always want to be right, and just reminding myself, that it's may not matter, or it's also sometimes good to really try to put myself in other people's shoes and see where they're right.
Yeah, absolutely. And that would be another great quick hits for us to do at some point. So thank you so much for having this conversation with me. That is our 10 minutes. I look forward to talking to you each again very soon.